Number 1.
11 or 12 personnel. What are the Nittany Lions going to do in week 1? Are they going to spread this team out and try to attack that way, or are they going to condense the field and attack them that way? If you look on film, and again, this is always the trick, is what happened last year isn't necessarily an indicator of what is to come, but it's a pretty good template for how you can attack scheme and philosophy. The players will change, their performance can change, they can get better, but there are still structural weaknesses to the defensive scheme. So again, we talked about cover 4, invites a lot of deep attacking, despite the fact that you are playing that defense to prevent those deep attacks. Because offensive coordinators, they want to get your safety one-on-one with their best receiver. It's almost like they can't help themselves. Well, last year, it didn't really matter whether it was 11 personnel, you spread them out, or 12 personnel, and you condense the formation. Really, that's the difference between how they stopped the run. There really wasn't a difference. They struggled in both areas over the course of the season. They had some good plays. I think overall, when you're talking about stopping the run, bringing more bodies into the box causes more chaos, which is also good for the defense. So if you have a confused look up front, somebody misses a block, you cause the running back to hesitate, and then this defense is good at rallying to the football. That could spell disaster early, frustration early for Penn State in terms of not being able to get the ground game going and sustain success. But if you look at what K-State was able to do and maul them off the line of scrimmage with 2 tight ends, that also worked last year. It worked to run against this team in 4 wide sets as well. I think that we've had a couple comments in the chat about spread them out and run. That is something that happened a lot. It's a smaller defense. They want to rally to the football, spread them out and run. But if you're Penn State, you've got some really good tight ends. Like really, really good. And this is, I think, the differentiating factor is the run game. It's almost identical if you look at the number of plays that they saw versus the run in 12 and 11 personnel. The difference is it's the Big 12, so everyone's running a hyper-spread offense. Only a few teams even have 2 tight ends put on the field. So, they saw just way more of 11. But in the passing game, this is what happened last year. 3 examples of tight ends having big days. Jatavian Sanders for Texas, 5 for 5, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, in an RPO-heavy offense with Steve Sarkisian. Baylor, Ben Sims and Drake Danby combined for 7 catches for 84 yards. Sammy Wheeler and Ben Sinnott of K-State, we talked about them, 5 for 129. And again, I went back to that K-State game. That's a big indicator to me of similar enough play style from K-State to Penn State and similar enough talent with tight ends and Deuce Vaughn at running back that they had a good day against that defense. And last year, we talked about this 2 high coverage shell. It's not just cover 4, 6, 2. They do a little bit of everything in that situation. Here's how the Penn State tight ends did against that last year. So this is against 2 high defenses, all of them included. 19 catches for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. If you're playing along at home, that's nearly 17 yards per reception. That is, to me, that's the answer. Theo Johnson, if he's going to have this potentially All-American season, if he's going to go all year long and be this huge play guy, this is a perfect game for him to do that. And I've talked about this. This is the one matchup I'll point out today. We talked about Marcus Floyd. Last year transferring into the defense. Now it's his 2nd year at that safety position. He can have improved play. He can be better at not overrunning his assignments and not being caught flat-footed on play actions and RPOs. Or he can still struggle at that. And even if he doesn't, he's not 6'6", 260. And he doesn't run a 4.5 in a straight line. Theo Johnson does all of those things. And if let's say that Anthony Wilson is a really smart player and has digested the entire playbook and he's ready to go week 1. He's 5'9", 194. Is that a matchup you want in your covered shell for the tight ends? Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren, physically they've taken a step forward this offseason. They should be able to line up and run on these guys. And then play action off of that, knowing Singleton and Kaytron. Do you see where we're going here? The tight ends are going to be a huge factor in this game, in my opinion. I think that it's going to be a big it's going to be one of the deciding factors if they can hit Theo Johnson on some big plays, and if the tight ends can help this running game and overpower West Virginia up front. So to me, you talk about where are you starting? Running backs, running the ball, receivers, throwing the ball. I think you start with the tight ends, and how are you going to use them, and then build your plan from there, because we didn't even mention Khalil Dinkins. Like, they could run 3 tight ends against this team, and I don't think that I don't think West Virginia's seen a whole lot of that. Steven in the chat says, T. Frank tailgating for an 8-day work week. Thank you, and the BWI team who are covering everything. Yeah, we want to bring you as much coverage as possible. We have 6 shows for 7 days this fall. Question here: where does Lance Dixon factor in? Great question. So he is their Sam linebacker, essentially. They call it the spear position. He is up to 220 pounds now, and he is playing that safety linebacker hybrid role that you'll see Curtis Jacobs, Tony Rojas, that kind of position for the Nittany Lions in their defense, except that he is a quasi-safety. He doesn't play in deep coverage. He's kind of an underneath defender, but they have him walked out over the slot quite a bit. This team tries to stop the run from angles that make me annoyed, honestly. Like, you got to cover the B gap and you're 8 yards out, and you've got a 225-pound player. If you run at them and you can defeat all of their chicanery up front and just run and effectively block, they don't have the size to compensate for that. So Lance Dixon, he's going to be playing that role. So he'll be covering the slot. He'll be covering some tight ends. I think that's a part of it, but this defense relies on their safeties a lot to do that. Now, that is a good point to bring up with Lance Dixon, is that in a good situation, you don't have poor coverage defenders covering Penn State's best players. Like, you're going to set it up so that your best coverage defenders are covering the tight ends. But you can't always get that, sometimes through a bad call against a formation you weren't expecting, or a shift by the offense. All these things can create matchups pre-snap that generate these explosive plays.